challenges for getting children to explore and start writing are that sometimes they don't have the ideas that they need, or they can be reluctant because they don't have the confidence to start writing a story.
Each time they write a new story or they start a new fiction unit, it needs to re-engage them. And one of the strategies I use to get around that is by using a lot of film.
What I've found really useful is to provide them with some drama, some opportunities. And that can be from setting up your classroom completely different. So they come in and you've dislodged a roof tile, and somebody's visited and there's a letter on the floor, or everything's turned upside down.
It needs to be a film that asks questions. It needs to be a film that puzzles, because then you can start to discuss about what might be happening rather than this is what's happened, let's just copy that. It's kind of what could be happening here, what does it feel like, what's the atmosphere, what's going on in this story.
Take an A3 piece of paper with a picture on it and divide it up into like jigsaw pieces, and gradually the children have to work out what the picture's going to be, and this hooks the children in because they're interested, particularly the ones that perhaps are a bit more sort of anxious about offering their own opinion.
The best strategy I've found for planning is story mapping. As a whole class, we map out the story together and put in the elements that the children want to focus on as part of the story. It can be quite a lot to begin with, but as you do it over the course of time, they will hone in on the key features of the structure.
You have your 5-part, your story opening, your build-up that leads to a problem, your dilemma where you leave a character hanging on the cliff, which all children particularly enjoy, and those boys will love what can we leave them with, what can the writer think is going to happen, down to what's going to happen then with the rest of the characters in the story, and then an ending.
What I find works for me is to actually have a storyboard. You can do it as 3 sets of boxes with a picture with the writing underneath, or you could have 5 sets depending on what you're wanting out of the story. I found what has worked well for me is to use it as a sequential way of how the story is going to develop. So the children do it as a picture form, and then they've got a structure to write.
And then as a group you actually orally rehearse that story together. You say it in pairs, you say it as a whole class, you talk it through, and you learn some actions to go with it, and it can be really fun for the children. The story map can work for characterisation and setting as well, because once the children know the story, it's then a case of just focusing in on the character and looking at that character, and either developing the character that's in your story or asking the children to create their own character.
Rather than saying, right, we're going to describe a setting, let's do lots of writing, we then make it out of plasticine. Make the scene out of plasticine, draw it. Draw it in the air, come out and do it, act it, become the things that are in your setting, and then have the children walking around saying how they're feeling about being in this setting. So lots of kinesthetic work.
Because they know what that character does in the story, they know where that character turns up in the story, they know the actions that character's got to do, it really does allow them to be quite creative.
If they were going to write a story from the viewpoint of a well-known character they've been studying, they actually physically become that character. So we act that out. So that they know, they take on the mannerisms, they might walk around the classroom as that character, speak like the character. So when they sit down, 3, 2, 1 to write, they're writing in the role as the character. And just that subtle difference can actually make a difference to their nerves about writing and just taking it away from their everyday life.